So y'all thought I was just done with the discussion content? Welcome back to Universe X, and today we are going to jump into another discussion piece because, you know, in the off season, what else are we supposed to do than make discussion pieces? It's not like huge tournaments are going on. So, yeah, that's pretty much that. I am excited to get into more stuff about the inner workings of this game and philosophy behind it. And I just recently realized how much there is to talk about. And I'm, with all the good feedback from the roundtables, I'm actually excited to bring it to content form. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for supporting the previous videos. And hopefully I give you something up to par that you guys can bite into and, you know, just kind of digest for more just insight in the game. I do have to say, again, thank you for all the feedback for the roundtables. That was a blast to make, and I'm so glad it's being so well received. I think this is the time to announce that I'm going to start pushing for that 2K mark for subscribership. I maybe just made up the word subscribership, maybe, possibly. But the point is, it seems like a lofty goal, 600 subscribers from now, but you know what, a year back I was sitting here with 300 subscribers wondering if I'd ever hit 1,000. So hey, sky's the limit, right? Point being though, I want to be known as one of the best content creators that chills in this game, and so I'm gonna work for it, and hopefully if I can earn your respect and trust, we'll get there, you know. That being said, as per usual, I just want to go through the normal plugs, both the official Facebook group for the card game, we can get official spoilers as well as you know, announcements, as well as the community discussion group ran by the people where you can talk about pretty much anything related to the card game. You got Universe X, which is my own group. I'm steadily posting more and more in there. I've got the Discord for Universe X where more and more stuff is happening. And yeah, it's all a good time. All those links are down in the description. Also, I want to direct you guys to TCGMetalZ, where you can find the hottest metal cards, I think, in the market. There's not many, but he does make the hottest. And he's actually working on a project that I cannot wait to bump on this channel. I've already got some giveaways planned for it. It's good. It's really good. And I helped get some input into the design of it myself, so I'm really proud. But you guys are gonna be blown away when you see it, I promise. So, that being said, as we move on to the topic, if you like the content, hit that subscribe button and be along for the ride. I gotta plan a bunch of stuff for when I do hit 2,000, but it's gonna be a celebration. Best believe that. And yeah, let's move directly into the topic. So today we're going to be talking about color identities. I quite often bring that up when I'm talking about things I kind of wish the game could change to or cater towards. But often I don't really explain it because that would be a whole nother video, hence this video. But I actually wanted to go into it because a lot of players that are newer or just didn't play from the start of the game might not understand what I mean when I talk about this. And that was that when the game first started, every color had a definitive role to play and the mechanics that it brought to the table. And as the game's gone by, some of them have changed, some of them have evolved, some of them have devolved, and some of them have just lost their way completely. So I kind of wanted to do this video to tell you how the colors started, maybe another video to kind of talk about how they shifted it, and the last video to kind of show you like some things I can feel like for the future, or like, you know, when things go wrong. So in this case, I'm going to start with blue, okay? In set 1, blue had a defined role, and most people think that it's control, and I'm here to say that that's not the case whatsoever. Blue's theme, in my strong opinion, would be resource manipulation. Blue was the only color in the game that could pretty much use its resources on a different level than any other color. Blue was able to ramp, it was able to draw more than any other color. Blue was able to untap energy to change how much effective energy you had. If you have 2 energy and you swing, or you tap 2 and you swing and Soul Striker untaps 1, you're effectively accessing 3 energy that turn. Whereas most decks had to decide whether or not to keep energy open for offense or defense, making their, you know, 2 energy maybe a 1 energy play followed by 1 energy up for defense the next turn. Soul Striker didn't have to do that, or blue didn't have to do that in general. Now, when it comes to the primary leader for that kind of, you know, archetype of play, it was Soul Striker. Still is Soul Striker to this day, because Soul Striker is able to swing, untap energy, swing, or untap 2 energy. And that's actually really what you're getting out of it. It was able to basically changed the dynamic of the effective energy you got to use, therefore how many cards you got to play. Then, you know, cards that define this, that backed up this trait. You got Sensu Beam, tap 1, untap 2. You got Objection, tap 2, charge another energy, helping you get ahead on the curve. It either, you know, kind of mitigates going second, or it completely breaks going first if you have the hand set up for it. A lot of cards that people don't necessarily, or a card that people don't necessarily remember, Vegeta Prince of Speed. He was a 5 cost, but he came down with a beefy body, and he also was able to draw you 2 cards. So he was a +1 in a deck that could play him for 5, untap 2 once they're awakened. Or if you had the, you know, 3-drop crit Vegeta, you can evolve him for 4 and untap the 2. So he was very cost effective, and he also drew you cards. Huge point in the game. Then you also had cards like Whis' Coercion, which was the only negate that pretty much was like a free negate. You tap 1 energy, you negate the attack, you untap energy. Meaning that even on 1 energy, you could successfully tap, or you can successfully counter as many times as you had Whis' Coercion. And that was a very, very powerful thing. So blue was the only color where you got to make a play, and then, you know, on the play, kind of do your things to untap energy. This was doubled down in set 2, where we got cards like Unyielding Trunks, which allowed you to untap more energy when you swing, and that allowed you to tap out 3 energy, but then use an Unyielding to untap an energy and then pass with your defense. You combo up and you get to open up your defense. Or in some of the worst cases, you could swing on, you could tap out all 4 energy for a play, swing, Unyielding, Sensu, and either make another auxiliary play or just have your almost your entire energy open for your opponent's turn. And then you had a Xeno button, same thing. You were able to, on attack, just completely open up your energy, or on counterattack, open up your energy for all your plays, allowing you to run more 1Ks that comboed for 10K. Or sorry, 1 cost that combo for 10K, things like that. Mafuba is another color-defining card, but I kind of feel like Mafuba is more of a control card than anything. It didn't really fit the theme, but it was one of Blue's defining cards for that set, for what it's worth. You look at Red now. Moving on there. Red was definitely aggro. The ability to put cheap damage on board, the ability to hit you with double strikes. They had triple strikes in there too, in the form of Champa and whatnot. The ability to swarm the board. That was Red's first bag. And the cards, the leader that was like most prevalent with this was Champa. Champa was able to give double strike to creatures or battle cards, and so he's able to turn your board very, very offensive. Champa would add Champa. Speaking of Champa, some of the defining cards in the format for Red were Champa. Yes, it could be used in any deck, but it was a red card at heart. That very much so into the theme. Any threat could become a double strike threat for the cost of 1 energy. Also, Kaba, take a life, hit for 2 damage instead of 1 if it connects. Kaba is a massive, massive part. Helps you self-awaken and helps you get in there for additional push. These are very much so how the, Red felt. Later, they would get Jiren Fist of Justice. He was a dual-attacking double striker who could swing on a battle card in active mode, stand up. He was not removal, but he was sort of removal, but he was removal through swinging. It was very red. You could see that red was just the punchiest color. When you get to green, green was all about hand destruction, and to a, at first, lesser degree, battle card destruction, but they really did grow into their own akin to battle card destruction. Their defining cards at the time, well, their defining leaders at the time was Broly. From set 1, Broly was able to destroy cards, discard cards in hand, and destroy cards on field, making him a dual destruction type leader, the embodiment of the theme. His archetype allowed you to rip plenty of cards from your opponent's hand, and going into the set, you had the cards like Full Power Energy. It was a counter that could destroy 1-drop, so you get rid of your opponent's residual Majin Boos after they've gotten the draw, but most of all, you were able to smoke Kabas off the field before Kabas could hit you for double strike. They could still take the life, but it was destruction. Another really good defining card was Goten Family of Justice. You combo 1, you destroy something 3 or less. That was absolutely huge for getting blockers out of the way. That was absolutely huge for getting small pieces out of the way that you didn't want staying on board. But it was destruction. You get over to another card that this card isn't. It's just like Mafuba to me. This card didn't really fit in Green's typing. It actually feels like a blue card, but SS Gotenks. This card is a 5-drop, but when it comes down, you draw 1 and untap 2 energy. That feels entirely blue, but it was in green. I'm not going to worry about it. Sometimes things can overlap, just not too much, hopefully. Now, when it gets into set 2, they started leaning a little bit more into hand destruction with some of the archetypes. And androids became a very, very, very good leader because androids could run the best hand destruction package in spades much easier. This being the cell chain. The cell chain was able to, in its middle step, destroy a card, very much so green, and its last step, destroy a hand, which is literally green. You could see how these effects were the embodiment of green. Color identity was very, very strong in sets 1, 2, and even 3. Moving on to another card that was like staple once these came out, you have Android 16, the blocker. It was a blocker that had revenge, so it was removal on the defense. You had Kale. Kale came down and blew up a bit of your board to blow up parts of their board. You could see that green was the de facto destruction like color. You got the TP Super Saiyan Gohan, who would just point, click, and destroy. Excellent. And then you get to yellow, which, despite what some people may have you believe that I won't go into right now, yellow is a defining trait is control. Hey, editing Chris here again. When I was doing this, it was kind of late and I was a little tired. I just didn't want to have a gap in content, so my apologies. But I forgot to talk about the leaders for yellow on release. There were 2. Both the leaders were relevant. You had Golden Frieza, who had the ability to almost very much so Soul Striker, but this one came at the cost of a card. You'd have to sacrifice a Frieza's army on board to draw and tap. And you could do the same thing on the backside, except untap more. So he was able to utilize energy better, but he had no self-awakening. Whereas Ginyu, who was the other option, Ginyu was able to self-awaken in order to, like, just progress his game state. So you had a leader that could self-awaken, and then on his backside, I believe he can give himself double strike. But basically, it was energy manipulation versus self-awakening, and back at this point in the game, self-awakening was incredibly hard to come by. So let's jump back into the actual video. Keep going about yellow. When yellow first came out, it was the only color with effect negation. If that doesn't scream control, I don't know what is. But you want to look at some of their other things. They had Crusher Ball, which is a counterplay. Yellow had the counterplays. The other colors did not. If control isn't defined by which color can tell you what you can and cannot play safely, I don't know what is. But between Cold Bloodlust and Crusher Ball, they had control elements that no other color had. And the ability to untap and be like, okay, Mecha Frieza, Mecha Frieza coming out, you know, the returning terror, was able to come down and be like, oh yeah, that thing you swung with and that thing I Crusher Ball, blow them both up. Cool, now I have double strike, I'm going in. These were very, very much so control cards. And then you go over to set 3 when they introduced black. Now, black was cool because black was very thematic, but it instantaneously gave it its own niche. You know what I mean? When it came out, the whole purpose, and I have a video about this from ever ago, when they said they were introducing Xeno cards, I quickly realized that nothing in this game interacted with the graveyard. And if you really want to think about it, the drop zone is like the past. It's cards you've already used, moves you've already used, characters that have already been on the field. The battlefield is the present, and your deck is the future, the cards you haven't really gotten yet. So I think it was cool because I, on camera, was talking how it'd be cool if Overwhelms did something like had a cost from the grave to, like, oh sorry, it's already happened. So the grave is kind of the future, yeah. And then I was like, it'd be cool if they had an effect that kind of, you know, did something with the grave, they came into the field, and then they left. Because that's like, you know, they jump in the timeline, they change the past to change the future, then they leave. And that's pretty much what that is. They change the past, which is your drop zone, and they come in and they affect the present, and they dip. And then sure enough, Overwhelm came out, and they removed your grave to come to the field, do their damage, and they did. So when blue came out, or when black came out, you mix up these colors sometimes, it was very interesting because they were able to impact the board in a very big way for what most people would consider a very cheap cost, but they weren't able to stay. They were able to make swings of momentum, but they never gave you board presence. And at first, when they made black, its identity was to provide tempo swings, but be splashed in all the colors. That's why none of them really had specific effects like that. That's why none of them really stuck to a color identity. Some of them just randomly had critical, some of them had double strike, some of them had removal. We even got things like, Scientist Food that just came in with double strike and was able to draw 2. They didn't really stick to any color identity simply because there wasn't supposed to be one. They were supposed to be like aids to the other colors. Now, eventually black would get its own color identity, but I think that's going to be saved for the next video. Back then, when this was the case for the decks, you had to build certain ways. Nowadays, archetypes build themselves, and there's not really much room for innovation. You can't just make hybrids with colors because, sometimes these things are super thick. They require double colors on activation skills. Like, look at Divine Presence. You can't use a blue energy to pay for Divine Presence. It has to be red. So blue-red can be a little dangerous unless you're running multicolored cards, which means you're changing the whole curve of your game because you're charging tapped cards sometimes. So back then, though, you had to figure out the ratios to mix correctly to make your deck do multiple things. You had things like Vegeta, okay? A blue leader who specialized in using crit. Okay, well, you add Champas in there. That's cool. You can use Champas on your leader swing after you've given him crit, and he's a double strike critter. Wonderful. But was it fast enough? Not quite as fast as it could be. And did it have enough power to end games as early as it needed to? Not really in mono blue. So what people do, they made an entirely red deck pretty much with the utility of blue. You only had to charge blue maybe once in that deck, maybe twice over time. But what that blue allowed you to do was add Sensu Beam to the plays you already had. You were already able to Kaba, swing with your leader for crit, swing with Kaba, cool. Swing next turn with crit, use Champa, use Sensu Beam, untap some. Hit your opponent for 2, they're down to 3. Only out of the, hit your opponent down to 3. Out of the 5 life they took, only 2 of them were able to go to their hands. So you've denied them cards while you're pressing on them. This strategy was literally mixed at looking at the aggro of red, looking at the leader skill of Vegeta, and then looking at the utility that blue brought. On another end, you have decks like Soul Striker. Excellent energy management. You can get up to the beefy cards, but the one thing you couldn't do was deal with your opponent's board. And that became especially hard in blue mirrors. That became rough in some of the green mirrors where they put some beefy green cards. So what did blue do? It evolved. It ingested green. And that allowed it to play things like Kale. That allowed it to play things like Gotenks for the monstrous play of tapping 5 energy to play Gotenks. Gotenks draws 1 to replace itself, untaps 2 energy, then you swing with your leader and you untap 2 more energy, draw another card. You have gone +1, and you have also used 5 energy to put a 25k double striker on board, and you've opened up 4 more energy, allowing you to more than play another card and still have energy up for your next turn's defense. That's how the game used to work back then. You want to look at Champa. Champa did the same thing, but it just wasn't as good as Vegeta in set 2 because once set 2 hit, we had Unyielding, so it was just better to use the blue leader instead. You have things like Ginyu, where people love the ability to have the destruction of green. They love the ability to use Sensu, but they thought, you know what? How about instead of running a tempo mid-range deck, I control the pace of the game a lot more. I decide when my opponent can use these dangerous cards against me and when they can't. I decide when my opponent can play this card tapped or untapped. That's how Ginyu got born. Tricolor Ginyu. You have a yellow leader who is needed to actually have Cold Bloodlust because he's also Frieza's army. That allows you to be charging yellow, so you might as well throw in Crusher Ball. That surrounded by you being able to charge blue and use cards like Sensu, as well as you being able to use essentially what the main core of the deck was, green. There are a lot of times in the game where you might have 1 yellow, 1 blue, 2 green as your energy, and then you just kind of build up from there. You might charge another yellow so you can use Crusher Ball and Cold Bloodlust in the same defensive step. Either way, back then, because colors had their strong identities, they all stayed in their lane, and the only way you mixed them was if you wanted to mix effects. Decks didn't do everything in one color, like yellow does right now, like red did a little bit ago, like yellow has done in the past. It was just, you needed to build effectively to house multiple effects. So, this is what I mean by color identity. We're already kind of sitting here at 16 minutes, so I don't want to go on too much further because I've been making some really long videos and I just want to make some more bite-sized ones. But this is what I mean by color identity. Each color initially came in and had its very much so de facto roles, and it made deck building very much so more technical. I remember my my second locals, I really liked red blue Vegeta, but I also remember getting punished by my roommate's Champa deck, blue-red Champa deck. And I remember how detrimental Kabas were for me. So I actually tried to make a tricolor Vegeta, and it worked very well. My first charge was generally green. That way I could use full power energy to stop myself from getting pressed in by Kaba. And if I wasn't getting pressed by Kaba, I had more activations on Vegeta to gain critical. We end up moving into the points where I'm playing red energy, I'm playing blue energy. The color scheme normally went charge green for full power energy, charge blue to have access to Sensu, and then you charge red to start playing other things like Kabas if I want to press a little later. I also included the 3-drop Gotenks that every time you swung, your opponent discards a card in hand, because when I'm swinging at you with crit Vegeta, and then I'm swinging at your battle cards with discard Gotenks, you were not getting cards from your life, and you were being forced to discard cards from your hand as you try to defend the cards on your board. And eventually this caused such a disparity in hand that I would just be able to push you over in terms of play. And this was just like a very technical deck building time. A time that I kind of miss, if I must be honest, when it comes to making decks, because only a select few decks can still build this way. Blue still builds this way because it's a good card out deck. Yellow right now definitely builds this way. I think black next set will be able to build this way too, looking at how generic the Trunks leader is. But that being said, that is the end of this part of the video. Let me know what you think about it. Tomorrow I'll be going into part 2, which is how each of these colors evolved over the course of the game until now. And then we'll talk about where part 3 is going at the end of that video. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your continued support. And I will be happy to see you guys in the next video. Thanks.